My name is Sofia Ehrich, and I'm an art historian, researcher, and curator of multisensory experiences. Between 2021 and 2023, I worked on Odoropa, a project dedicated to olfactory heritage, which left me forever curious about the sense of smell. It is my pleasure to welcome you as the host of the Internet of Senses Institute podcast for the Sense of Smell. And today I have Emanuela Maggioni, who has over 15 years experience in research and consultancy related to smell, including working with Unilever, Benetton, and IFF. With over 30 scientific publications and a PhD in the psychology of smell perception and emotions, she's also a Royal Academy of Engineering Enterprise Fellow and Honorary Research Fellow at the UCL Department of Computer Science. Her work and research have led to 2 invitations to exhibit novel smell technology at the World Economic Forum. That sounds really exciting. So thank you for joining us today, Manuela.
Pleasure, Sophia. My pleasure, really.
So can you start by introducing yourself and explaining a little bit about your background, maybe also a bit about where you're from and how you ended up in London? I think that's where you are now.
Yeah, you already briefly kind of described my academia and my career so far. I've been extremely fascinated and passionate about the sense of smell since I was a child. I come from Italy, and I come from the north of Italy, but I have half of the family from the south of Italy. And when I was visiting my grandparents in the south, the moment I was connected with them was through smell, because I was immediately taken back of this kind of sweet memories of food, warm sun in the house. And it was such a deep connection, even more than just a phone call. So to me, it was a language, a medium of triggering a powerful emotional reconnection, a kind of language, to be honest, that it was just take me back in that relationship, which otherwise would have been like kind of like distant in somehow. So I was so fascinated when I started studying. I applied for psychology, but actually was all related to neuroscience, understanding how we smell. But most importantly, all my thesis from baccalaureate to master to PhD was using the sense of smell as a language. So how we can exploit the sense of smell, because we have a completely dominant environment, audiovisual, and the sense of smell has been neglected from Freud, from many other neuroscientists in the past, saying that if we are giving importance to the sense of smell, we are just animals, primordial animals, we are not rational decision maker and so on. So we're just fascinated to say how that is not true, because it's definitely part of what we are, and it's coming from Darwin that we are who we are because we are adaptive animals. So we can also navigate space, we can be safe through smell, and we can connect to each other. It can be triggering emotion, memories, cultural, is so rooted in what we are. And I was so fascinated to say there is something to be done. There is so much to be done in taking this sensory modality as the other modality. So I just been obsessed with that, to be fair, in all my research career since I was 19. And through that obsession, what I'd done, so I started in psychology, but then I needed to create my delivery device, olfactometer, back then, because we didn't have an olfactometer in my research center in Milano, University of Milano Bicocca. So quickly I started reading paper when I was 19, and I say, okay, that's it, we can build one. So I kind of just searched for parts we were available from the medical school. They were using valves and pumps to do rehabilitation for people affected by stroke. So just put all together, and I bought a very big tank of medical air, and I created my first ever device, which is still there, functional, gluing, soldering. We have no clue what I was doing, but it worked, and it was just a tool to do research on understanding how I can stimulate something from the olfactory perspective and having an emotional reaction. So measuring the physiology, heart rate, what happened to your skin conductance, like how your body is reacting to what I give it to you, and what does it mean from an emotional perspective, implicit but also self-report, because there is such a cultural difference around the sense of smell that it was so fascinating for me to try to combine both work together and giving a measurement, but also an understanding is richer than that.
So you called it an olfactometer. So was this existing before, like when you started your research, did you say, oh, well, I need one of these, so you built one, or is it something that you kind of figured out?
No, when I started my research, I was reading like big research center like in Oxford, where then I went after. They were having something very professional that you can measure the delivery of the smell. So it was a very sophisticated tool. I didn't have it, and we didn't have the funding to buy, or my professor back then, he was not considering me. I was just an undergrad student. So I needed to build one. So I just kind of take inspiration of the big complex one, and I made my simple version, which was effective and working. But it was the beginning of my interdisciplinary career, because it's true, I study and I've been in the Department of Neuroscience and Psychology, and then part of my postdoc career was transitioning in engineering, where I really transfer all this knowledge of how we smell in definition or engineering input to create toolkit, but also like a new version of the delivery device, which now is an integral part of what I do and is part core of the intellectual property of the company. Then I founded later.
So I want to go back to something you said, because you said that it was difficult to get funding for this machine, and you were only an undergrad student. So I know this is something that Rachel Hertz mentioned, that when she, was doing wanted to do her PhD in smell, her supervisor said, yeah, sure, go ahead, but you're crazy, kind of thing. So I love talking to people who have done their research or their PhD within this realm of smell, because it's so challenging, and it's kind of like, it's so revolutionary, but it's so challenging because you have to figure out where to start. So I would love you to tell me, like, what kind of challenges did you face?
Yeah, this resonate with me completely, because it's exactly all my entire life. Like every time still now I talk to someone about what I do, they was like, what you do, why? It's not important. And I can extremely extend of the complexity. In the research career, I think if I was labeled as the weirdo one, they was like, okay, doing research something that is, well, why you do that? So it was a constantly challenge and a kind of fight to have my space, because exactly there was no funding for something that is so not important. But then it was completely in extreme when I transitioned from academia to become an entrepreneur and then apply for this Royal Academy fellowship, where I need to compete with traditional engineer. I'm not an engineer, so we're talking about like sensor chips and whatever. And it was like, why you are talking about the sensors, man? Like, it's not neither a standard way of measuring it. Why you do that? And that I was labeled as completely crazy. But then the worst experience was going to investor, venture capitals people, and say, oh, what I'm doing is a real life application, believe me. But I will tell you more later in the story of the company as well, the way in which I'm trying to approach the topic, which is still a challenge, because as you said, and it's something is absolutely true. It's difficult to convince people. It's difficult to make the audience understand the importance of the sense of smell. But to be fair, there was a big transition even in post-COVID, at beginning of COVID, and then after COVID, everyone started to realize how important is the sense of smell, because they generally experience the lack of that and see how they impact the general well-being. So I think that it was a pivotal moment even in my history, but obviously the global history of the sense of smell world, basically.
Yeah, there definitely was a little shift, not a little shift, a big shift.
A big
Then
shift, yeah.
I think a lot of us felt that, like, that we're researching within the field of smell research, however you may call it, we all felt that shift in importance. So one last question I had about your research is, what's something that really surprised you about research in psychology and the sense of smell and emotions?
Yeah, I think I already kind of started mention that the fact that it's not just psychology, but it's such an interdisciplinary topic because you need to, the sense of smell is sensing, so it's a sensing system. Some chemical, they are in the environment and they are not static, so they move, they live, they are dynamics. And when you start to do research, if you use just static mean like jars or bottle or spray, you have like zero controllability almost of the stimulation, which is such an important part of when you do psychophysics experiment. When you do vision and you need to understand the perception level, you constantly need to modulate the light is like waves, and you can do it quickly with the computer, picking different colors, shade. And when you come to smell, it's like just so primordial. It was like, okay, that is a gear up. That is the reason why I need to build my own olfactometer. And this is the moment in which I understood if I really want to make this a step out of my research field by being like really something, a real world application, I need to become interdisciplinary and need to understand how to translate all the knowledge in real information, instruction to create something and simplifying the complexity around that. I think that it was the key moment in my path.
And so, do you think that the sense of smell's connection to emotion is one of the most important parts of the of that sensory system?
Is one of many important parts, but to me is the important part is the fascination, because it's also linked with emotion, which is another topic. We can talk other 3 days on that, because it's something is not clearly understood, is clearly measurable in somehow in a vector of activation, positive and negative, but the way in which we label, we perceive our body reaction to emotion, the self-perception, the body feelings is such another complex topic, which is not easy. It's not like vision, you can give a number, and the same, it goes end to end with the sense of smell. And there is so much individual differences, cultural differences, fluctuation of our hormones, they impact us, is so individual. And emotion is the same, is absolutely individual. It's difficult to label an emotion and say we are happy. And to me, because I'm also dyslexic, language is a bit blurred sometimes, because a word can mean something else. So in my mind, it's just activating a completely different, like even visual presentation for me. And emotion and smell even higher, because it's so individual. There is not a way in which emotion can be totally shared by someone else. We can think of sharing, we can think of say I'm emotional, but there is not a standard of comparing my I'm happy with you're happy. Is still you can have a quantitative measure, like what happened to your body, like oh, my heartbeat is going up, I sweat, my respiration is going up. It's like it's coming back to Darwin. That was fascinating me. And the sense of smell goes end to end, because to me it's a real survival, and it connects us between each other in a way in which we are not neither aware. So it's a crucial part of like newborns, they can recognize the mother just smelling the breast, like, which is absolutely fascinating. And to me, that is emotion as well, right? It's a survival needs, like how I conceptualize emotion and how I study emotion since my PhD is this multifaceted reaction, which is not just is a offset, like something happened to you, and how you decline that is so complex. And sometimes we need just to step on event-related situations. So I do something to you, you have a reaction. It's the same with the smell. I can stimulate you on something, and I can see your immediate reaction that can be approach avoidance as flight and fight, but then can have like such a much more complex and richer way of shading the experience on memories can trigger to you related to your own experience, culture, moment in that very situation, because you are having a cold, or there are so many other facts that can impact your senses, smell, and perception. They are not easy, but they can be taken in account in this kind of adaptive system and platform that they constantly learn from the user and taking that as part of integral of the experience of the sense of smell and emotion that is obviously interrelated.
And have you used the tools because you research smell and you consider it a kind of language, or at least I think that's what I understood. Have you used any of this to help with your dyslexia, or has it helped you in any way or impacted that in any way?
Some of not directly, but I've always been working on cross-modal association. So how our brain can compensate and enrich reality through how we experience everything coming from around us. So how really vision and audio and smell make sense of the reality. And I always been extremely curious how we can bias ourselves. And
Yeah.
dyslexia is something that is all in reading and in talking, not in content and such. So the way in which it really didn't help me, it's just a way of expressing myself in a different manner. And to me, what is amazing and the potential it has, the sense of smell, exactly to be a modality for accessibility almost for people that are visually impaired, or emotionally impaired, or we did some amazing work with kids visually impaired in UK and how the sense of smell as a multisensory storytelling tool can enhance inclusivity, sharing emotion. So it's kind of like giving a label or a way of talking without talking, and the same of like sharing an emotion of a story without having a visual information, but then you can connect on what happened with the someone next to you without saying it, but just experiencing directly. So that is the lens he helped me, and is the motivation and is kind of my eagerness to make this out there for everyone. And I think the vision of the company that probably will come later is exactly making the world better through science, not just abandon it and leave it as a secondary things, but just enriching it with this potential.
Great answer. Thank you for sharing. I really enjoyed hearing about your research and also getting a little bit of a personal perspective on why you started the company. So can you explain now a bit about OW Smell Made Digital? Maybe also if you want to talk about any collaborators you worked with to create this company, and how it came to be as well.
Yeah, we'll love to give you more details. So in a nutshell, I think it was meant to be because, as I said, I had this kind of constant need of creating and making the sense of smell usable and accessible to everyone. So when I transitioned in my postdoc from neuroscience into human-computer interaction in Sussex University with Marianna Obrist, was my supervisor back then, and she had a lab on human-computer interaction and multisensory integration, and it was all about like how we can exploit other sensory modality. They're not just vision and audio in interacting with technology, how we can open up that. The lab was called the Sky Lab. Sussex Computer Human Interaction Lab. So when I met her, basically I was like, okay, that is my place because it's exactly what I want to do with smell. So we started working together. At the beginning was a project funded by an American VR company on how to create virtual reality real and realistic in somehow. And then immediately after we say why we don't write a grant specifically to take the idea of standardized sense of smell, designing with the sense of smell as a self-contained project within this ERC, this European Research Excellence Award Mariana was having. So we wrote that and we won this very, very difficult to get. So we were like still shocked of, is a European ERC Proof of Concept Award, is 1 year grant, just to let you take a science idea as a potential proof of concept for a product, for a project. It can live outside academia. And I was leading that with her. And then it was the beginning of everything. So at the beginning, the name was all widgets, which stay for all factory widgets, kind of these building blocks of how to design and use the sense of smell as the other modalities, as you have a Photoshop for pictures. So thanks to that grant, we had all this proof of concept of the software. It's a beta version. You can design using some features of the sense of smell, emotions. So you can drag and pick different emotion. You can validate the personalize on you. And you have other features as like temporal design, spatial design. So you can simulate. There was a lot of work going on transforming all this knowledge, even in physics, of how the sense of smell disperses in time, how it can reach a user, how we can design different output to reach different even user in the same environment. So there was a lot of human interaction basic. They went there. I learned a lot in that process. I convert all this knowledge in a software development and kind of rules and algorithms to that. And we presented in CES Las Vegas 2018, like a year after we started this project. And it was a great, I mean, it was just think about an academic transported in the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas. It was just shocking, but so much interest. And it was like, okay, that is meant to, like, people, they want a way of controlling the smell. We always say now, you want to curate your environment, and the sense of smell is fundamentally part of what you do around you. You're constantly bombarded by chemicals and you have no controllability around that. So that it was a proof point to say, okay, what we are doing is really meaningful, and there are traction everywhere, from Sony Entertainment, gaming, obviously, but a lot in education, how to help people with disability, even like the attentional disorder, and how to promote focus. There are so endless potential. And in CES was the real world contact to say, okay, it's true, that's something we need to push. And then I applied to the Royal Academy of Engineering to be, is an enterprise fellowship, so you become forever an affiliate with that, which was fantastic because I didn't even know I could do that because I'm not an engineer, but actually I was doing engineering work. Now I'm maybe like the smell engineer from my team. And it's true, there is not a name to define when you are a smell expert, because a smell expert can mean so many different things. So you can be a historian, smell expert, you can parfum maker, an artist, like there are so many variations. And I always feel like I'm an engineer somehow. Like I make the sense of smell available, just enable others to do many things, not me. I'm not creating a content. I don't do any content as such. I just enable the potential for others to use and exploit, basically.
Very interesting. I like the sound of olfactory engineer or smell engineer. I think you could use it.
It can be a new label, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, you've talked about the different ways that the product can be used, which is it something that's for sale now, or how is it being used, and like what's your market?
Yeah, I think I can give you a bit other dots on the journey. So after that award, and thanks to the mentor, it was a professor in Cambridge, I can establish the company, so do the actual spin out for the university, which was another like big transition in my career. And then I can set up an entity, and we have office and people working. So I need to pitch the idea to angel investors at the beginning, then venture capital later on. So now we have what we call the pre-series A fund, and we have 14 people working in the company. So there was like a long, and it was just myself at the beginning, and then we evolve over time. So what happened is we had different beta version of the software, but the integral part actually was the delivery device, because you can design something, but there is no way on you to deliver what you design for. It's like you have an amazing picture, but you want to print it, and there is no way of print it. There is not a printer. So what is around is all these extremely high-end, pricey delivery device olfactometer, laboratory-based, that you can find in a research center that specialize on that, or in big fast-moving consumer company where they do R&D project, but they are expensive. It's not something you can find around. Or on the other hand, like gadgets, stuff they can just spray or deliver something. So in that transition, it clearly was to create a delivery device, which something that is easy to be used, but accurate as the eye hand. So soon I created proof of concept of a delivery device, which has been actually validated and used and funded partially by Rockefeller University, New York, and Andreas Keller. Andreas Keller with the team of research, they developed what is called Smell RS, so a way of measuring the sense of smell for medical application. So some chemical, they're called the Smell RS resolution and specification of smell perception, but they were using jars to test it. So there was different concentration and it was like spotting the different smell. It's the same of an eye test, but it was like analog. So Andreas met me in a conference, in a human olfactory conference, actually, in Netherlands, back in 2017. And he was like, you are the only one who can create something I need, which is not too expensive, because it's not like a product coming from a lab, and it can become a user self-contained portable device. And they did it. So we sold like a few units for Andreas Keller and Rockefeller Lab, and Julian, which is a co-founder in this project, is a ENT doctor in Geneva. So we started to have like 6-7 units in different labs. We started to have like in Australia, in brain labs where they were testing concussion effect on smell perception. So we started like that, and I was like, oh wow, I don't need to have a company and I'm selling stuff and I'm producing myself. So it was a journey of like what to do next. So we focused very much on the hardware. So I patent protected the hardware, and it became an integral part, because thanks to knowing new people, as I said, my mentor was a professor, Florino Andrea from Cambridge University, was an expert in sensor technology. So how we can make this device smarter and smarter, that we can have sensing technology, we can become like adaptive and have a feedback loop from the user, but also from the environment. So then they become a smell adaptive device, which now is big like this. I wish I have with me. I have in the other lab next door. It's very tiny and compact. So where we are, so we sell those devices as a development kit. So we have FCC market them. We don't sell widely because it's still a proof of concept. And our vision is like to license the device, design and knowledge to other company in different sectors. Where we are now, we work extensively in sleep quality. So we use the device and the platform. So what I was mentioning before, it became a platform because the editing toolkit is sit on the platform. It's like a user interface. And then there is all this feedback loop of sensing that feed in the database and recommend you different sense compounds to achieve ideal effects. Sleep is decline, falling asleep sooner, stay in the REM phase longer, transition, or avoiding you to interrupt the sleep. And we are trialing with Sleep Center, doing all the integration with the brain waves, all these polysomnography mechanism. We integrate all these sensor in our kind of engine, brain, and then we trigger different chemicals for different variation for different individual in different ways, connecting on what happened to you. So if I spray you lavender for 5 seconds, does it work? Is give you a positive outcome? Yes and no. And then we learn to obviously machine learning, and then we swap and we adjust and we optimize we say kind of the perfect scent experience overnight for you. That is just individual, because the device is also capable of creating very target smell delivery. Is not empowering the environment. It can be very direct, very fast, so it can disappear quickly, and it can also build up a mix in mid-air different chemicals to achieve the desired compound.
You've talked about a few different ways in which the would you call it a machine?
Yeah.
Or yeah, has been used. So you said for sleep, so not monitoring sleep, but releasing smell based on sleep patterns, I guess.
Yeah.
But you've also used it because you mentioned early on about VR or virtual reality. So this is kind of a broad spectrum of how you can use one machine. So what are some examples of who you've collaborated with? Because you said VR, have you also worked with maybe museums or other types of spaces? Because I could see that this kind of machine would be very useful in a lot of different kinds of environments.
Yeah, as you can see, is kind of endless, the application. It's like where there is audiovisual, you can have smell and can be applicable everywhere. So what really we do like is a science-led scent tech, which is not just the machine, but is all around the machine, this brain engine, the database, the recommender system, and then the feedback loop of data from the environment or from smartwatch or other input that can really make the new way which we understand, experience, and use scent in so many different environments. And the application, they've been really spread across a variety of clients, because basically I never really had a marketing approach, but there was so many people that wanted to use the sense of smell, from artists, from installation in museums. So we have a client and an installation running for 5 years in Singapore Museum, in the Science Center, for kids to interact with smell as a part of the curated environment. So there's a trail for ants and they play with that. We had application in virtual reality for different, like from rehabilitation of neglect patient they suffer of stroke, so they don't see part of the visual space, and they can use VR to do rehabilitation and enhance memory and physical movement through smell. So we have publication scientifically covering different aspects, car interaction, how to calm down aggressive driver, switch off from automatic driving to normal driving condition, speeding up this, using the sense of smell as a messaging that is not overpowering visual cognitive in chat message notification. Virtual reality from a storytelling narrative perspective. So we have, I think the very biggest project was 3 by New Reality Co. It was a multisensory installation it was a story to raise awareness of the deforestation and raise money for the Rainforest Alliance. So you are embody a tree, and the sense of smell is just part of this narrative, is an anticipating situation, but is making your embodiment realistic. So you feel what the tree feels. And the story is very touchy. The story has been going all over the world in different conferences, and like from the World Economic Forum, we won different awards. And the very first time we deployed and showcased how you can use the sense of smell as a storytelling modality, and people even, they were a group again of visually impaired in Davos, the World Economic Forum. They experience a piece in VR without having the VR, but having all the other multisensory modality. They experience the same, and they were crying in the end as all the other user. It was extremely impactful and meaningful. And we had a different other virtual reality installation, even with a motion platform in a project called Fly for the British Airways, developed by Charlotte Mickelborg with Picture and Production. We won the South by Southwest Innovation Award with Disruptive Gaming, always led by Charlotte. It was a multisensory augmented reality game for museum, for families. So they were going in the museum, in the Mary Rose Museum that is here in Portsmouth. They were like tagging some clue around the museum and having a character talking to you. And maybe there was a fire gun of the Tudor time. So you were smelling the gunpowder or the tar or the beer or pomegranate. We developed specific sense of the time, and it was like just time link related to what was happening in the action. So it was like automatically release or an action in augmented reality. What else we've done? We work closely for a few years now with one of the top of the fast-moving consumer good companies in R&D. So research and development, they use our technology to speed up the R&D of what they do, to test different things, different products, and they can reduce waste material, time of R&D, and we just support them with the platform, and they keep their own proprietary then compounds they develop for different products. Smell Care was a big project, a big, again, European project, and follow up with a medical grant in UK, where we deployed our platform for 6 months in people affected by smell disorder, in collaboration with the medical school, to see if doing physiotherapy twice a day with a controlled, reliable device is also recording all the answer and keeping track of your records can improve your sense of smell. And we target 2 groups, aging population and virally, like a COVID or other impairment of the sense of smell with different shade, and we're like pre-screened by the doctors on that. And we compare longitudinal usability, enhancement, and it was an amazing project for me to see how really people enjoy to have the device and the technology in the real environment. And then educational, many educational approach, multisensory integration. We have very diversified kind of markets application, which was a pro and the negative side of having a company, because they always want you to be focused. And this is the very reason why now we are deep in sleep enhancement. And actually, we are also transitioned with the name of the company that from widgets became OW Smell Made Digital. And now we also transitioning is Hynt. And we are rebranding, launching, and have a completely new kind of identity.
So I want to back up slightly. So you gave great examples of all the different projects you've been working on. And I know you mentioned that you're not so much involved in the content of these projects in terms of like designing the content, but I'm really curious what you think about how should smell be designed. So what do you think is important for people to experience or understand when they, for example, are in a VR experience and they're seeing something and they're smelling something at the same time, or they're being educated on a piece of history and then they're smelling something that relates to that? What do you think is important about that design experience, like from your perspective of designing this object, or this machine, but also have researched the connections that smell has with emotion and memory?
So what you say is absolutely interesting, and is exactly linked to what I was trying to convey is I give the tool to do that. Like I'm not pretending that I know what you need to design in your content, which you are a VR creator or you are a designer or a museum exhibition artist, or you are a historian of smell, or whatever other application, or you're an architect and you want to design an environment, or you're in an automotive company, you want to pick the smell for the car. I'm not telling you what to do. I just show you the tool to do that and give you exactly the simplification of, say, we work with single element chemical compounds, and we have internal database of, say, that elements is trigger you the association with grass. So I just give you the database access of language interface, which is done by many, many others. But what I give it to you also, what happened in the space, so the simulation of how the smell can disperse in the environment and how that change, obviously, because if I'm close by the screen, or I'm 7 meters away, or I'm in a museum, or I'm in a VR experience, it's totally different because smell lives in time and space. So I give you the tool to control that experience and you to pick and design and swap. I can recommend you what can go with, and then it's up to you. You can modify it because you can do coherent experiences. I smell grass, I want to see grass. Or I had many artists say, I smell something and it was a totally disruptive experience. Say, this is exactly what I'm not expecting to have in the reality. I want rotten eggs when I see a rose. And it's a disruption. It's another way of like think about Hitchcock, the shower scene, I mean, there is all the study of the music done, right? If you take that, I use always when I was teaching in my lecture university, if you take that scene and you put a smell or a sound that is totally different, it looks like a romantic scene, someone is coming to you until you see, obviously. But the pre-moment is so crazy how our brain can just compensate and think whatever. You cannot decontextualize what happened around you. So if I say to you, use this or do that, it's just actually it's a forcing, is a limitation. Is you, the artist or the creator or the designer. So what we are doing now with the company, with Hint, is exactly creating a beta version of editing for professional, as you have a Photoshop, right? If you're editing your picture, no one is forcing you to do anything. There are just some tools. A limitation of what you can do in your space is exactly what we do. And then we have the device, which obviously has some limitation. And obviously we want to work and work and work to have a universal printer, but they contain of number of smell you can combinatory mixing together. So I can recommend you and I can support you with the design toolkit, but then will be you trying and then redefine and having measurement from input, but also implicit measurement, because what we do, we interlink with biofeedback when necessary for the sleep or reports or whatever measurement you want to have. Is endless what you can do.
So that also means that the OW platform, it's not only a platform for people to build or design their own smell experiences. Is it that the data that you have collected before, like you're saying biofeedback, is also in this toolkit? So let's say I want to get someone to calm down. So your toolkit tells me, well, this worked in the past, dispersing lavender at this many intervals.
We know by science it works because there is the chemical SCP and it works with the receptors, with the relaxation, but then it becomes your, what we say with sleep is like, we program your most restorative sleeping experience tailored to you, and we learn from you by doing constantly, and we collect your real-time feedback with your heart rate, for instance. So if I give you something works or not, you can like it or not, and we see immediately what happened, and then we can reswap and recommend and tailor. It's like a Spotify, but of implicit measure, and the same Spotify learns from you what you like, what you skip from your personalization. Is the same we have in the database. So we have a core, we know something, and then we learn constantly from you. It is the adaptive components, which is the novelty, I would say.
We have to wrap up soon, but I have another question before our concluding question. So what kind of smells are you used to working with? Because do you use just things like orange and lemon and lavender, or do you also, when you do these artistic projects, do you also use more like artistic scents to see how people react and document this feedback as well?
We work almost always with single element chemical compounds, which obviously are associated with, I always say, this is a grass smell, this is lavender smell, this is that. And we try to work with wide spectrum of the smell, but not to the traditional one that you expect. Also because it's incredible to see some more elaborate type of even single element chemical compounds. They are undefined really direction or perception, how they can be then interpreted and modified in function of the context. Like if I give you these single elements of garlic, it can take different shapes. It can become be more onionish or whatever in function of what you are seeing. Or if I show you a video of burning something, I can really play with the burning single element compounds. Or I can replicate, this is exactly also what we do with the algorithm, something that is close by or the sensation, but not using anything of that. So we have like 10 single elements compounds we can use to have a spectrum of replication. That is the cutting edge part of also the company, which obviously we try not to publish because it's some core at the moment, but we will like to divulgate at some point because it's also part of the research. So it's not using this common one-to-one association, but it's really mixing in midair with the device and recreating a lemon from 10 other different elements that are zero lemon in it.
So interesting. I could talk for a really long time with you about this, but then we would probably go to 2 hours. So before we conclude, I want to ask you what's next for Hint and the rebranding and everything. What's your first or what's your next steps?
Apps. So we are really kind of reimagining the potential of smell or what we do with scent substantially. And I think it's really limitless what we can do. We are now working on sleep quality, as I said. Next is really improving every single step of life. I really see the power of using personalized tailor smell for many different things, from relaxation, meditation. So we just move from a vertical of market application to the others. And we have this approach of just trying to give everything to someone who does a product. It can be a consumer company working on sleep, and then we transition to the other. So we want to transform so many different industries, from customer experience, problem solving, building new brands. It's really, I always say scent is a superpower. It's like how you do that, what you want to do with that. And we have talking with clients, they have completely different usage and experience. And we just want to transform multiple industry basically, and giving a new tool, a new language, a new design, a new modality is not there yet, and making the next step of possibility substantially, starting from the sleep, because it's a measurable impact as well. Something, as I say before, the challenge is like how to convert all of this in concrete measurable action, and people like investors, they can quantify what you do, and they just don't, they need to perceive it, and it's really rare they can give you money without understanding the return of what you are doing. So sleep is concrete on that. But the future of scent is basically here, we are trying to shape it and amplifying and creating this kind of partnership with others. They are then taking out to the world and just supporting them to do that.
Well, I'm very excited to see how this goes, and I'm also very inspired by you.
Oh, thank you.
By by your passion, but also about how much you have accomplished, and it just seems also like, yeah, you've done it yourself, and it's amazing. I'm very impressed and inspired. So thank you for that little boost in my evening. Also, I feel like, oh, I'm gonna go do anything.
That is amazing what you just say, and I'm pleased and glad and really delighted to hear that. But actually, it's always like meeting the right people in the right moment,
Of course.
and getting the energy and the passion of others in other parts. And as
Yeah.
I said always, I'm here because probably I don't know really the consequence of many things I do. I just do it. And it's just like I go because the passion moves me. And then I found like the financial expert, and I found someone else is helping me with the bureaucracy, the legal part. There are so many aspects when you do a company, which is just crazy. And I keep my little powerhouse of I want this making, like I want this to happen, and I will push that until I can. And I hope I can see this in a real world environment very soon.
Yeah, and I think it's a beautiful testament to supporting others and bringing up others as well, like when you can, whether they're within the same research that you're doing or not. Like it's also very nice to see that you were able to find people to help you and bring you along the way while also having the passion to do so. But thank you so much for your time and for joining the podcast.
Thank you so much. I enjoy as well. And